The essence of psychic attack. The essence of a psychic attack is to be found in the principles and operations of telepathic suggestion. If we put together what we know of telepathy and what we know of suggestion, we shall understand its modus operandi. Suggestion is of three kinds: autosuggestion, conscious suggestion, and hypnotic suggestion. The distinction, however, is not as fundamental as at first sight appears, for the goal of all suggestions in the subconscious mind is the same, and they do not become operative until it is reached. Suggestion is distinguished from threats, and appeals to reason by the fact that these aim at a mark in the conscious mind. If they succeed, they owe their success to the acquiescence of the conscious personality, whether coerced or voluntary. But suggestion does not make its appeal to consciousness, but aims at laying its hands upon the springs of action in the subconsciousness and manipulating them from there. We might compare these two processes to the operation of pulling at the bell knob outside the front door and taking up a floorboard and twitching the bell wires. Themselves, the result will be the same in both cases. The bell will ring threats, and argument pull the bell knob with varying degrees of emphasis, from the persistent tinkling of moral suasion to the resounding peal of the blackmailer. Suggestion twitches the wires at various points in their course. Autosuggestion is given by one's own conscious mind to one's own subconscious mind. Now, you may ask, why can I not give orders to my subconscious mind direct, without having to resort to the paraphernalia of suggestion? The answer to this question is very simple. The subconscious mind belongs to a much earlier phase of evolution than the conscious mind belongs, in fact, to a phase prior to the development of speech to address it in words. Therefore, is like speaking to a man in a language he does not understand. In order to deal with him, we must have resort to sign language. So it is with the subconscious mind. It is no use to say to it, do this, or don't do that. We must make a mental picture of the thing we want done and hold it in consciousness till it begins to sink into the subconsciousness. The subconscious mind will understand this picture and act upon it. The actor who wishes to cure himself of stage fright will fail to do so if he says to his subconscious mind, don't be frightened, for a nod is as good as a wink to a blind horse. Equally, if he makes a mental picture of stage fright and says to his subliminal self, now don't do that, the result will be disastrous, for the subliminal self will see the picture and omit the negative, because the word not means nothing to it. In order to handle the subconscious mind effectually, we make a mental picture of the thing we want done and hold it in mind by repeated applications until the subconsciousness begins to be influenced and takes up the task of its own accord. This is the end result of all suggestion, and the different kinds of suggestion are distinguished not by the difference in end result, but by the gate through which they enter the subconscious mind. Autosuggestion originates in our own consciousness. Waking suggestion originates in the mind of another and is conveyed to our mind by the ordinary channels of the spoken or written word. Hypnotic suggestion enters the subconscious mind direct, without impinging upon consciousness at all. Hypnotic suggestion, which means, literally, suggestion made during sleep, and is to some extent a misnomer, is of three kinds. Firstly, true hypnotic suggestion, made when the subject has been rendered insensible by magnetic passes or fixation of the eyes on a bright object. Secondly, suggestion given during normal sleep, as Coué advises should be done with children. In my opinion, a most undesirable proceeding. And thirdly, telepathic suggestion. All these modes of suggestion enter the mind behind the censor, that is to say, they are independent of consciousness, which is neither asked to cooperate, nor has the power to inhibit them. In most cases, suggestions made in this way are never recognized as coming from outside, but are only discovered after they have matured in the subconsciousness and are beginning to take effect. We do not see the invisible seed that has been sown in our mind by the mind of another, but in due course germination takes place, and the strong-growing shoot appears above the threshold of consciousness, as if it were a native growth. The skillful suggestionist always aims at making his suggestions harmonize with the bias of the personality, for if they do not, the established subconscious complexes will expel them before they have time to strike root. All he can really do is to reinforce and stimulate the ideas and impulses that are already there. Though perhaps latent, he cannot plant an entirely alien seed. He cannot graft a rose shoot on a lilac bush, for it will merely wither and die. For growth of the thought seeds of suggestion to take place, they must find a congenial soil. It is herein lies the strength of the defense. We may not be able to prevent the minds of others from sending us suggestions, but we may so purify the soil of our own natures that no harmful ones can find a congenial seedbed. It is a simple matter to pull up a seedling nettle, but it is quite a different business to eradicate a thick-set bank of tangled roots and stinging shoots. Many years old, it has been said, and not untruly, that a person cannot be hypnotized into doing anything which is contrary to his real nature. But what is the real nature of each one of us? Have we all overcome the ape and tiger, or are they merely caged? Suggestion can unbar the cage of all our secret temptations, and let them loose upon us none but. The saint is naturally immune. It is possible to reduce anybody to anything provided suggestion has unchecked scope. For a sufficient length of time the purest woman can be made a harlot, the noblest man a murderer under certain conditions. Knowledge is necessary to protect, and it is that knowledge which I intend to give in these pages. Let us now consider exactly how a psychic attack operates. In the realms of mind there is neither time nor space as we understand them. I do not propose to argue this statement philosophically, but state it as a fact of experience which anyone who is accustomed to operating on the inner planes will have shared. If we think of a person, we are in touch with that person. If we picture them clearly, it is as if we were face to face with them. If we picture them vaguely, it is as if we saw them in the distance, being in the mental vicinity of a person. We can create a thought atmosphere by dwelling upon certain ideas in connection with him. This is how spiritual healing is done. The affirmations of Christian Science are used in order to get the mind of the healer into a certain emotional state, and his condition effectually influences the mind of the patient. with whom he has put himself in rapport. This power, however, can be used for evil as well as good. The founder of Christian Science was wise enough to put her teaching in such a way that her students would not readily discern the second edge of the sword. As long as the world in general was ignorant of the powers of the mind, it was better that nothing should be said by those who knew, because the knowledge, if spread abroad indiscriminately, might do more harm than good, giving information to those who ought not to have it. But now that so much is generally known and even practiced concerning the powers of the human mind, it is as well that the real facts should also be known, and the whole matter brought out into the open, and as far as lies in my power I am prepared to do this. Any message to the subconscious mind must be couched in very simple terms, because subconscious thought is a primitive form of mentation, developed before spoken language was known to mankind. The primary aim of the suggestion is to create a mental atmosphere about the soul of the person, is to be attacked or healed, until a sympathetic response or reaction is elicited within the soul itself. I use the term soul to include both the mental and emotional processes, but to exclude the spiritual ones. Once this reaction is achieved, the battle is half over, for the gate of the city has been opened from within, and there is free ingress. The telepathic suggestion of definite ideas can now proceed rapidly. It is this point which is the critical one. In any occult attack, up to this point the defender has the advantage, if he has sufficient knowledge, the knowledge I hope to make available through this book. He can without any undue exertion retain that advantage indefinitely and wear his attackers down, even if unable to meet them on their own ground of occult knowledge. There is nothing in this world or the next that a hypnotist can do with the person who keeps his nerve and won't pay attention. There are two gates, and two only, by which the attacker can gain entrance to the city of Mansoul, and these are the self-preservation instinct and the sex instinct. The hypnotic appeal must be couched in terms of one or both of these. If it is to be successful, how does the attacker proceed? He has to create an atmosphere about the soul of his victim. On the inner planes, he can only do this by creating the atmosphere within his own consciousness. While he thinks of his victim, if he wants to perform a psychic murder, he must fill his own soul with the rage of destruction until it overflows. If he wants to perform a psychic rape, he must fill his soul with lust and cruelty. The cold rage of cruelty is essential to effectual operations of this nature. Now what happens when he does this? He has sounded a ringing keynote in the abyss. It will be answered. All beings who have this keynote for the basis of their nature will respond. Dark Uriel and Israel and Naaman on the wing, and will join in the operation, but they do not operate direct upon the victim. They work through the operator. It is like the old game of nuts and may, in which the one who is sent to fetch her away is gripped round the waist by the leader of a chain of supporters. The real pressure comes on his own abdominal muscles, as anyone who has played the game will remember. And when the magical operation is over, what then? Will the operator be left to enjoy his victim in peace? Is it likely? This is the mystical basis of the story of Faust. The devil might be not only willing, but anxious to enable Dr. Faustus to win Margarita, but he came for his soul out the appointed time. We may also remember that if Margarita had not responded to the lure of the jewel song, she would not have fallen a victim. The weak spot in the defense was, after all, in her own nature. We have considered the modus operandi of telepathic suggestion in detail because it forms the real basis of every kind of occult attack, whether it be a discarnate entity, a being of another order of evolution, a demon from the pit, or merely the panic-stricken soul of a selfish friend, clinging to the life of form regardless of consequences. In all cases, the opening gambit is the same until the aura is pierced. There can be no entrance to the soul, and the aura is always pierced from within by the response of fear or desire, going out towards the attacking entity. If we can inhibit that instinctive, emotional reaction, the edge of the aura will remain impenetrable and will be as sure a defense against psychic invasion as the healthy and unbroken skin is a defense against bacterial infection. It happens sometimes, however, that a rapport has been formed with the attacking entity in a previous incarnation, and therefore it holds, as it were, the key to the postern. Such a problem is a very difficult one, and external assistance is needed for its solution. The difficulty is increased by the fact that the victim is often disinclined to allow the break to be made, being bound to the attacking entity, whether discarnate or incarnate, by bonds of fascination or even genuine affection. A case with which I was acquainted throws so much light on various aspects of psychic interference by incarnate souls operating out of their bodies that it is of value to quote it at length. We must not, however, conclude that all cases of such incontinence are epileptics, for there are many other causes, both organic and functional. These occurrences showed a certain cyclic regularity, occurring about once a month. In the case of a woman, this would naturally be referred to the 28-day cycle of her nature, but in the case of a man, no such explanation was forthcoming, and we therefore had to look for another 28-day cycle to explain his periodicity. The only other cycle of this period is that of the phases of the moon. The question now remains, is this woman an incarnation or not? That is to say, is the midnight visit paid in an astral body projected from a living human being, or by an earthbound spirit which has succeeded in evading the second death? Comment down below for any of your opinions and answers. Thank you for watching. Subscribe, like, and share this video.